Welcome to Meaningful Interviews, Part 3 with, could say, the Goyin, the genius Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Keller, who's a chassid, a Chabad chassid of the Rebbe. And I knew his father, Olav Shalom, was a very, very special man. Now, we've spoken about your knowledge and writing about the Alter Rebbe and his Maimorim. We spoke about your insights into the interesting things in the Talmud that you don't hear in the yeshiva halls of Lakewood and Mir and Panovich. Now I want to turn to your writing, especially you take manuscripts, and you've published several of them. One's called Pirush Rashi Al Masechtas Moed Katan. It's one of the tractates of the Talmud. And one is this Menachos Min Talmud Bavli Al Pitvus Rishon. You can see this dark page here. Rebbe Keller found had access to the manuscript of Rebbe Tzal Ashkenazi, you said, and he put this out. But I want to also talk about, people come to you, right, from all over, and they know that you're an expert in this in this field and other fields. How do you tell us a little bit about that, your work? And you've been writing probably about 30 years, I assume.
Okay, so obviously there are works that I initiate their production.
Yes.
And then there are people who want to assemble books or do research, and they turn to me to either do the research or edit the books.
Yes.
Sometimes it involves also typing. So one example is the Avnei Chaim from the famous Rabbonim, Reb Peretz Chaim, and his sons, Reb Meir Chaim, and Reb Mendel, and Reb David Tzvi Chaim, the Redatz, David Hirsch, Chernigover, and his son, Reb Mendel Chaim, and also Reb Gershon Chaim.
Gershon Chaim from Haifa.
Yeah, who was from Haifa and then in Shikon Chabad in Yerushalayim.
Right.
Yeah. So
he's from Russia, but he moved there. Yeah.
He was from Russia. He was a Rav in Alexandria in Russia, and then he became a Rav of Bezdin in Haifa, and then he became a Rav of Shikun Chabad in Yerushalayim for his last 16 years. And he was also one of the editors of the Encyclopedia Talmudis, this Reb Gershon Chaim. So Reb Gershon, all these Chaim Rabbanim, there's the man, his name is Reb Lezer Lane. Reb Lezer Lane, what happened was, Reb Peretz Chaim had quite a few sons, and at that time there was a decree that if that all the Jewish children should be recruited, a certain percentage of them, 10% should be recruited to the Tsar's army. And apparently, there was always a threat that the son of Reb Peretz Chaim should be one of those children. Now, there was a rule that if you're an only son, then they won't recruit you to the army.
Right.
So when his second son, I believe, his oldest son was Reb Meir, the second son was Avram Aaron, and Avram Aaron, they took, now the way you write Chaim, the ches is an X. So when you clip the X, it comes out to it's the shape of a Russian L. So it became Lane. So one of the branches of this Avram Aaron Lane was a person by the name of Reb Shalom Ber Lane, who lived in Kfar Chabad. He left Russia and married a woman who came from Poland. And he was actually one who saved, his father had sent him. I believe his father's name was Aaron Leib, and his father had sent him that he should go. There were refugees coming from Poland into Russia, and he sent him that he should go and do things with them. He brought them yarmulkes, and some of them left with him.
So why are you telling me all this?
I'm saying, anyways, he decided to publish these tshuvas of Reb Peretz Lane, all the lanes.
Right.
And when he did, he approached me and he asked me if I can both type it and edit it and add. When I told him that I'll add footnotes also, he was very happy. Because what the footnotes do is usually you read a tshuva, you want to read a tshuva, but you didn't just learn that.
A tshuva is a response.
It's a response from in different halachic queries. But you didn't just study that subject. So if somebody who is well better versed in the subject,
Right.
study that subject, and he brings it in the footnotes, and then you can follow what's going on.
Right. So that was your work on that book and that sefer.
And what's interesting is that he had another book, Avnei Chaim, which is the history of the
Yes,
Chaims and
it's
the
fascinating.
Laws, which is a fascinating
You
book.
did that too? No.
No. So that book was primarily done by him, his research, and written by Schneerberger.
Yeah.
But, however, since the Chains, they go all the way back to those who were the heads of the exile during the Babylonian exile, and so he wanted me to do that research. And he made some of that research himself, but he gave me to finish writing it and doing the final. So that occupies about 120 pages in that book, and it's phenomenal.
Yes, I've looked at parts of the Chaim. So your work is research oriented. Now, are you an expert in reading manuscript writing? In other words, I have a hard time deciphering and reading a lot of those. What we
So a
call
lot of
kisriyat.
it is experience, and the rest is sayata d'shmaya. It's
Help from Hashem.
Help from Hashem. So experience. When I was a young boy, I started.
How old were you when you started?
I would say when I was 11 3/4 is when I went to Israel, and within a short time, my father had a whole discussion with Rebbe Meir Greenberg on the pages of the Yagul Torah about a Muchni and Yamshel Asa Shloimeh, and he wanted to look up
About what?
the mechanism that Ben Kotin made for the kier, for the wash basin in the Beis HaMikdash, and there's a whole discussion what the Yerushalmi and what the Rambam. And there was a discussion about Rabbeinu Hananel, who was Kiruan, is in Tunis, and was a big, huge city in the times of the Goinim and a little afterwards. That's where Rabbeinu Hananel and Rabbeinu Nissim. Rabbeinu Hananel wrote the first commentary that covers practically almost all of the Talmud, besides Vakachim. And there was a reference in Rabbeinu Hananel's commentary on Yuma, and he wanted me to look up the manuscript. So that was the first time that I really...
So you went to Hebrew University?
I went to the Hebrew University.
You were 11 and a half years old or so?
That was when he sent me, and then sometime later I had some spare time, and I went on my own, and I did research over there in the walls of I was able to look up microfilms. As a matter of fact, one of the books that you saw, the Rashi on Mayat Cotton.
Yes.
So that was a book that was first published from manuscript, because in our Gemaras, what's written there's the internal commentary is Rashi's, the external is Tosfos, but on Mayat Cotton, on some other Masechtas, it's not Rashi. Now, on some Masechtas, it's not Rashi because Rashi didn't write, or Rashi wrote, but we don't have it. But on Mayat Cotton, not only does Rashi write it, but it was around in the times of the Rishonim, and for some reason, which we'll soon explain if we have the time, it was when they first printed in Italy. When they first printed in Italy the Gemara,
I held the Gemara in my hand.
Yeah. So
1492.
1494 is the first print of a Gemara Brachas. And when they first,
I held it in my hand.
Yeah. When they first printed the Gemara, they used to spend years. They didn't just go, okay, let's go print and let's print a set. And no, they gave it some time. They would take a big somebody who really well versed in the Talmud and Gemara, Rashi, and Tosfos, and he would look at a few manuscripts of the Talmud and Rashi and Tosfos, or as many as he can get his hands on, and he would do diligent research. It would take him a year or two to produce such a. They didn't just. So 33 years passed. I'm not sure if 33 or 31 years passed from the printing of Brachas till Mayat Cotton, which I think is one of the later Masechtas, and they only printed from the 36 Masechtas that have Talmud. They probably printed 23 or 24. There were still others. But Bumbergi, he was a Christian. He wanted to make money, fast money. He liked to print sets. His Gdeilah set, he wanted to print a set of Gemara. So when it came to Menachos and other, he just took one manuscript and printed it as is.
Okay, so here's my question.
Yeah, good.
When you find these new manuscripts,
Yes.
Has it supported what you learned in the Talmud and its commentaries, or sometimes there's contradictions?
Okay. So we find that even Rashi would sometimes say, Hochi Garsinon. This is the way we
study it.
We study it.
This is the way the text
Right. So
is.
obviously, if Rashi has to tell you Hochi Garsinon, it usually tells you that the text that he had other ways. Now, it could be one of two ways. It could be that there were two texts, two basic texts, and Rashi is selecting one, or maybe in certain instances, Rashi is just selecting one even opposed to text, which is a thorough research that a lot of researchers do research on it. What's interesting is about Shama Friedman, who did a lot of research on these subjects. He's a professor that was once in the JTS, the Jewish Theological Seminary. Now he's probably in Yerushalayim somewhere. He did extensive research, for instance, on Perek Seichos Umnin, and he found that a lot of the differences.
What tractate is that?
Baba Metzia.
Okay.
And as interesting, Baba Metzia, usually we talk about that, we said there are 60 tractates, but if you count them, there are 63.
Right.
So Baba Kama, Baba Metzia, Baba Basra each mean one gate. They're one gate of a big Masechta, which is known as the Zikin, which deals with all monetary affairs, and it was divided like this. So that's,
right. And you go back to your point.
Anyways,
so what
Baba
does he say?
Metzia, there's a Perek HaSeichos. So he says, he did diligent research on that particular Perek, and he found that a lot of the disagreements already in the Gaonic era, there are already two versions that we have. And one became prevalent in Ashkenaz and Tzarfas in Germany and France. Another one became prevalent in Spain. But usually we do not have sometimes there's one which precedes that split. So somebody claims that in Maseches Kedushin we actually have a manuscript that precedes that split. But it's not, if both were around, it means they're both valid. We know Shivim Panim La Torah, there's 70 facets to the Torah, so they're both, when it was given in Sinai, it was given
So here's my question, what about Yemen? Isn't Yemen the oldest Jewish community?
Yeah, so what's interesting is Yemen is one of the older Jewish communities.
2,000 years old.
And we have letters from the Gaonim written to the people of Yemen and of the land of Yemen and Yemama. So we know that Yemen is the original format of the name, not Taman. Taman is based obviously on the fact that in Tanakh we have Taman. But in any case, Yemen. And what's interesting is we spoke about the earliest dated manuscript of a Gemara.
Yes.
So the first record in Rav Shira Goyen's letter about a written Gemara, you see, in Bavel we had this expert system. We said we had 60 people, everybody knew one Masechta,
right,
and they taught it, so we didn't need a written Talmud. But the first time we needed a written Talmud is when one person, for some reason, left Bavel. He came to Sfard, to Spain, and he was going to teach the Talmud over there. Now, over there, the only way you can learn the Talmud is if you had a written text. So he wrote down the text, and we have the year when he came, which is approximately the year 760. And what's interesting is, there's one place in the Gemara where in some of the old manuscripts it says which year it's recorded or from which year it's recorded. There's a discussion in Gemara Avodah Zarah. It tells you there's 6,000. The Tanat Eliyahu says the world exists for 6,000 years. First 2,000 years is chaos, Tohu.
Right.
The next 2,000 years is Torah. And the last 2,000 years is Yemaisa Mashiach, days of Mashiach. And it says, Vaveinei Seyim, in our Gemaras it says, and in their sins, Yatsu Mashav Yatsu, it came out of it, came what came out. But in the Gemaras, it used to say years, actual amount of years. And Rav Shira Goyen tells us in a tshuva that he discusses this Gemara, he tells us that every year you add, where usually the Gemara is meant to be static, there's one part, there's a few words that are meant to be fluid. That word that's telling you which year, how many years we are into the 5th millennium, or 6th millennium, once that time comes, that's supposed to change. Every year is supposed to add, because you're supposed to it's supposed to be telling you how many years have passed since 4,000. But at some point, when they just copied copy from another, they stopped changing. So in any case, the oldest date recorded in that Gemara Avodah Zarah is in a Yemenite manuscript, and the record is around that time. It used to go. It says 520 something or 535 something like that, which is not a long time after it was actually recorded in Spain. So that's interesting.
Okay, now What about your recent writings? I know you wrote a sefer, a book on the Tmimim, the students in Lubavitch Yeshiva, which I've used myself. It's fascinating. I know that you've recently helped produce 2 volumes on all the Hasidim of the Tzemach Tzedek, or as many as you could find. So what type of work and research do you do for those things?
Okay. So I just want to add 2 more interesting stuff. One has to do with Menachos. You mentioned Rabbeinu Betzalel Ashkenazi.
Yes.
When in Vilna they printed the comments of Rabbeinu Betzalel Ashkenazi on Gemara Kotchim.
Who was this Rabbi Betzalel Ashkenazi?
Okay. Briefly. Rabbeinu Betzalel Ashkenazi was a student of the Radbaz, of Rab David ben Zimra, was a Rav in Mitzrayim, and he was one of the teachers of the Arizal. And the Arizal, he wrote Shita Mekubetzes, an assemblage of Rishonim,
which we used in yeshiva,
of course. And Rabbeinu, and he wrote also Hagois on Kotchim, on the Gemara Kotchim. And the Arizal was part of the group of those students that worked with Rabbeinu Betzalel Ashkenazi.
Okay, go ahead. So what do you want to say about it?
So when they printed it, they believed that they were printing it from the actual manuscript of Rabbeinu Betzalel Ashkenazi.
When they printed what?
The comments of Rabbeinu Betzalel Ashkenazi, some Rishonim, some corrections in the Gemara. And it turned out somebody wrote, a guy, Eliyav Schuchtman, wrote a whole article pointing out that it's not the actual manuscript.
Okay.
But when I did the research, I found out that there are 7 pages in Menachos, that there are 2 copies of it, and one of them is actual handwriting of Betzalel Ashkenazi.
Huh.
And what I found out when I was looking at it was something interesting. We always ask the question, how come the Gemara shouldn't have commas and periods? And we would think it's holy. The rabbis decided at some point that that's the way it should be. But I found when I looked at it that the Rabbi Betzalel Ashkenazi writes between every place where there should be a comma or a period, he makes a dot in the middle between the 2 letters. You see after Chayva?
Yes.
And you'll see. So what I did is I had actually a few pages retypeset from the Gemara, Rashi and Tosfos, where I inserted the commas and the dots, so you should know that it doesn't have to be that way. Not only that, but the corrections I inserted inside. Instead of having the mistake the way the original printer printed it, and then the correction, I just corrected inside.
Right.
Anyways, to get to another point.
Yes.
So when it comes to history, somebody, Reb Shalom Bar Shapiro, who's also puts out videos about the Rebbe, and he has an extensive archive.
He's the son-in-law of Rabbi Mindel, who was the secretary of the Rebbe.
He's also assistant. At some point, he was appointed to be the assistant principal
in Lubavitch
Yeshiva in Ocean Parkway.
Yes.
And he had given me the archive of the yeshiva that was given to him by Rabbi Tenenbaum, and he actually asked me to write this book. And initially he funded it, so he started this project, and at some point he ran out of funds, so I took over the project.
Yes.
But what's interesting is, so I interviewed.
What are we talking about? Your book on the
book
students
is about the students of
1940s.
The yeshiva that in 1940 the Frierdiker Rebbe established the yeshiva Tomchei Tmimim here in America.
Yeah, 1940 to 1950.
1940, and there's a little interesting introduction to it, which is recorded in Rabbi Jacobson's book.
Yes.
How he was the first to teach a lot of these students Hasidus.
Yes.
And they sent some of them to
the American
Europe.
boys.
Yeah, they were American boys. And there was a couple who went, his daughter and son-in-law went to Atvatsk for a whole year.
Rabbi Hecht.
And another 2 boys, Rabbi Barnetsky and Rabbi Levy, went there. And then there were another 6 boys that went there just for a few weeks.
Yeah, because the war broke out.
And with them, the yeshiva in Ocean Park, in Crown Heights, actually in Brooklyn, the Tomchei Tmimim in Brooklyn was established. When it was established, it was actually established in East Flatbush.
Rabbi Bucket's Shul.
Which later became Rabbi Bucket's Shul, and Rabbi Bucket came from Shulchai.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what do you want
At the time, I believe Rabbi Castell was the Rav.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What was the name of that shul? Shemer?
Oynik Shabbos.
Oynik Shabbos.
Yes.
So...
I believe on Stone Avenue. Church Avenue.
No, not
53rd. 53rd?
Yeah, 53rd over there, yeah. I remember. So... what's your future plans as far as writing, researching, anything that's really
some people actually said that it would be interesting to translate into English. There's a lot of interesting, one of the things that I did over there, we have the picture when, I believe it would be in March, Tafshin Beis, 1942, when they took pictures of the 50 students that studied in Taim Chitmim, 50 plus students
770.
in 770, and that was all the students from the big boys all the way down to second grade, whatever, what we call now second grade.
Right.
There weren't that many classes then.
Right.
And there are also, in addition to the general picture, which all 50 students plus students are together, there's also individual pictures of Rabbi Gurari's classes, which was the Mesifta of Rabbi of the Achei Tmimim, which is Kaladni. There should be somewhere also.
What's your point?
Yeah, the point I'm saying is, so when I'm saying, so one project is to translate that into English.
But we don't. That's
but you're talking about new projects.
You need to be used for more complicated.
One thing that would be interesting to do is the Talmud, the Rashi on Talmud to English. There is by now books on Tosfos in English.
Yes.
But nobody has translated Rashi on the Talmud in English.
That's interesting.
So this.
Well, may Hashem help that we find a supporter, a donor, and it's going to go online. So we're calling the people. Rabbi Keller would like to do this project, and I think he's the right man for it. As you've heard, this has been a phenomenal 3-part series, and I want to wish you atzlacha, much success, and Yidush Chassidus for your children, your family, and we should see Mashiach with our own eyes, and only have simchas. Thank you very much.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you very much.